Hello and welcome to another Creative Coding for Beginners video. Today we're going to be looking at a new topic called variables. Now the name might not mean much, but we'll find that they're actually really useful and used throughout almost all coding that anyone does. We'll introduce the idea very gently with a simple example, and I'm hoping that this particular example really illustrates why they're useful. So let's see how that goes. Okay, I'm logged into Open Processing as usual. I've enabled the simple JS library all the way down there as usual, and I've set up the setup section with simple as usual. It's the same as we always do. We've used circles lots and lots, so I won't talk about them. What you can see here are instructions for drawing 3 circles. Now let's look a little bit more closely at those numbers that are passed to the circle instruction. The first circle is drawn at 200, 200, has a size 50. In fact, they all have a size 50. The next one is drawn at 200, 250, 200, 300. Let's draw on a piece of paper what that might look like. So the first one was drawn at 200, 200. Let's see what the next one was. 200, 250. And 200, 300. I'll just check that was correct. Yeah. So it seems to form a line of small circles, almost like a chain. So if you imagine these are rings, then if they're connected together, it forms a little chain that's hanging down. Okay, let's try that. It's not very complicated code, but we'll see if that works. Yep, that worked. So we have 3 small circles, one above each other, and it almost looks like a chain. Okay, so if we wanted to move that chain to somewhere else on the canvas, we'd have to change where those circles are drawn. So let's try that. Let's say we want to move them to the right a little bit. So the horizontal coordinate has to be the same so that they're all aligned vertically. Let's have a look at that, what that means. So we move them from 200 to 400. So if they're going to form a chain hanging down somewhere here, all the x coordinates have to be 400. So that makes sense. Imagine we want to lower it a little bit so it's further down the canvas. So we know this second number is the y coordinate, the vertical coordinate. So if we increase that to 300, it should be further down the canvas. Now what do we do here with this one? So that was 200 and has become 300. We've added 100. So to keep them all aligned and in proportion, we need to add 100 here, 300 and 400. Now they should, if we've done our calculations correctly, they should be aligned and still forming a chain. Let's see. Yep, that worked. Let's go back to our sketch and just repeat that so we understand. So the first circle's at 400, 300. Next one's at 400, 350. And the next one's at 400, 400. Yep. And the previous one was up here, wasn't it? Is it 200, 200? That's it. So the first chain was over here. And this new chain is over here. Now let's look at the patterns there. For this chain, the horizontal coordinate is always 200. Because they are all this far along the canvas. So that one was at 200 along, and this one is at 400 along. So if we look at the code again, you can see they're all 400, 400, 400. So that's at 400. The other pattern is that the distance between these circles as they go down the canvas has to be just right. If the gap is too big, then those circles don't touch. If the gap is too small, then they overlap and it doesn't look like a neat chain. And we know from our code that the distance between them, they're 50 apart, so 300, 350, 400. So from there to there is 50, and from there to there is 50 again, and the same applies here. You can see 200, 250, 300, so the gap is 50. Okay, so we've understood that. Why did we go to all that effort? Well, if our task, if our challenge is to draw these chains at a random place on the canvas, we might need to take advantage of that pattern. So let's think about that. How do we want to code so that these chains are placed somewhere random on the canvas? So let's take that step by step. Let's try it. We're going to get it wrong the first time, but we'll learn a valuable lesson. So if we say, if our first thought is, well, let's use random numbers to place those circles. Let's say 800 for those. I'll just copy and paste that. So what we've done here is we've said the first circle is placed at a random coordinate along the canvas and a random coordinate down the canvas. If you're not familiar with this random number instruction, have a look at a previous video. We spent 2 or 3 videos actually going through them, so they should be quite familiar, and if they're not, they're quite easy, so do pop back and have a look. So this should pick a random point on the canvas and draw a circle, and the same for the next circle, and the same for the next circle. Do you think that should work? Let's see. No. Yep, the circles are at a random place on the canvas, that's true, but it's no longer a chain. The 3 circles don't form a chain. Let's run it again. Yep, again, there are 3 circles, but they are not aligned according to that pattern we just talked about. So let's think about that. The first thing we saw, the first pattern we saw, was that the horizontal coordinate had to be the same. Let's go back to our sketch. If I picked a random point here, let's say 300, 100, that's my first circle placed at a random place on the canvas. I can't put the next circle just anywhere like that. It wouldn't form a chain. It has to be at the same distance along the canvas horizontally, so it has to be along this line somewhere. So the x coordinate of the next circle has to be 300. So that can't be a random number now. That has to be what that number was. Well, that's a puzzle, isn't it? How can we use this random number instruction to pick a random number and then somehow remember what it was and use it again here and again there? If only there was a way of remembering numbers so that we could use them again later. Now this is the heart of this new idea of variables. And yes, there is a way, and I'm just going to show you that now. So we're going to introduce a new instruction called var. And var means variable, and it lets the computer know that we're about to create a box, if you like, for storing something. We usually store numbers. You can store other things, but we'll talk about those in future. So let's call, we have to give this box a name. Let's call it x, because that makes sense, doesn't it? It's the x coordinate. And we'll say inside that box called x, we're going to put a random number between 0 and 800. So that's a box now with a random number inside. Let's draw a picture of that. If I have a box, here's my three-dimensional box. It's got a name x, and inside I put a number, let's say 31. Now every time I need to use that number, I just use the name x instead. So every time I use x in the code, it'll look inside the box and bring out the number that was there. So let's do that. That sounds a bit abstract, but let's do that. So instead of using a random number or even saying it's at 300, instead of doing that, we're going to say x. So let's repeat what we've just said. This x, when the circle instruction sees that x, it'll say, hang on, that's not 300 or 134 or 800, it's just x. What is x? Aha! You've already told me what x is. X is this thing here. So whatever number was chosen, let's say the number 600 was chosen, then the number 600 would be placed inside this box, 600. And every time we use x, like this, that number is used instead. So this will be translated into 600, 600, 600. Let's try that. Before we hit the run button, let's think through what will happen. 3 circles will be drawn. They will all have the same horizontal coordinate, and that value will be the one that was chosen here and remembered. Let's run the code. Almost there. It's starting to look better. Certainly those 3 circles are now in a line vertically. Let's run that again just to kind of see that randomness in action. If I run it again, so the first random coordinate was chosen somewhere here, and the next circle has the same horizontal coordinate, and so does the next one. So we can see that variable in action. Yep. So that part works, but the next bit doesn't. The bit about those 3 circles being close enough that they're touching, not too close, not too distant, so they form a chain. Let's go back to understanding why that was. Well, do you remember when we said those 3 circles have to be 50 apart, so the distance between that one and that one vertically is 50, and that one is 50. If I had a circle drawn somewhere else, let's say if I started here, then the next one down would be 50 further down. So make those circles. And the next one, the third one, would be 50 further down again. But our code isn't doing that at the moment. It's picking purely random numbers. So if that was 200, then that one should be 50 more, 250. And that one should be 300. But that means they will always be drawn 200 down from the top. We wanted this chain to be placed anywhere on the canvas. So maybe we need to pick a random number for how far down the chain is. Well, let's try that. Let's call that variable y, random number. So we've created another number which could be in the range 0 to 600. We've put it in a box called y. Let's draw that box. It's a slightly different shape, this box, and it's called y. And inside we're putting a number which happens to be a random number. Let's say 124. Every time we use the name y in our code, 124 is used instead. So if this picks, we don't know what it's going to pick because it's random, but if it picked 124, that's what would be inside y. So if we said y, the first circle will be drawn at x, y, but we know the next one should be 50 further down. So what we can do a quick calculation. We can say this one, the next circle is at y, but 50 further down, y plus 50. We can do that. We can actually do these little calculations. So if y was 124, y plus 50 is 174, if my brain works correctly. And the next one, we want that to be 50 again, further down, which is not 50, but two sets of 50, so 100 down. Before we hit run, we're going to just talk about that again. Okay, so we're going to say x is a random number and y is a random number. Now let's pretend we're the computer and we've chosen, I don't know, 300 at random, and y is another random number, and let's just say we've chosen that as let's say 200. So those are the boxes that contain those numbers. That box contains 300, that box contains 200. Looking at our code, the first circle is drawn at xy. xy. So x is 300 and y is 200. So the first circle is drawn there. Let's go back to our code. The next circle is drawn at x and y plus 50. So x is the same, 300 all the way down. But this time it's drawn at y plus 50. Y is 200. So y plus 50 is 250, and it's drawn there. And for our final circle, which is drawn at x and y plus 50, 100, that's at 300 because that's x, and y plus 100 is 300. 200 plus 100 is 300. You can see that working now. You can see how remembering the first position, the first circle's position, has helped us calculate where the next two circles should be. That worked, doesn't it? Because this is new, let's work through just another example. So let's say we run the code again, and this time, because it's random, it shows x is 750 and y was 50. So the first circle is at xy, which is at 750 and 50 there. The next circle is at x and y plus 50. 50 plus 50 is 100, so it's there. And the third circle is at x, y plus 100. X and y plus 100 is y is 150 then. So that works. We've drawn a chain there because the first circle was drawn at 750, 50. So that's we've done a lot of work there, and the idea isn't actually that complicated. The best way to kind of understand it is to try it a few times yourself. So let's see if this really worked. The moment of truth. Let's run that code. Yay! So that's a chain, a correct chain of 3 circles aligned and just touching each other, placed at a point on the canvas. Now if I run it again, it should be somewhere else on the canvas and still a chain. Yep, that worked. That worked. It's gone off the edge of the canvas a little bit, but that's working. That's pretty magic, isn't it? That's rather nice. So just to recap, if we have a variable which is just a box, we give it a name, we can call it X or Y. As long as it's consistent, we can choose pretty much any name. Let's call this one A. And if we say A equals a number, it could be a random number, but it could be a number we've chosen. Let's put 50 inside. If we have another box, let's call this one B. And let's say we're putting a different number inside, 100. If we use the circle instruction, and we have a size of 50, and we say A and B as the coordinates, the circle instruction will say, well, I expect a number here. What is A? Oh yeah, A is a box, a variable, a box, and inside there's a number 50. So I'll put 50 there. I will translate that as 50. And the same for B. I expect a number here, but I've got a letter B. Let me look up to see if there's a variable called B. Yep, there is, and it's 100. So that will draw a circle at 50, 100. There. So that was just a little recap of how variables work. We'll use them again in future, but they're actually quite a simple idea once you get used to them, and they are used pretty much everywhere. And the simplest way to think of them is they're a way of remembering a number that we've chosen. And that number could be something we've chosen like this. It could be 50 or 100, or it could be a random number. And the example we worked through with the chain really illustrates how they can be useful. Okay, we might do another video on this, taking it even slower, but I hope that was interesting and started to show the power of variables. So until next time, cheers, bye.